Okay, we have Bill. Hello, Bill. Talked to you earlier today.
Oprah, how are you?
Hi. Bill's in Connecticut on Skype. Bill and I Skyped on the Oprah Show earlier today. What's your question to us now?
Yes. Well, first of all, Eckhart, I'd like to say that this book is indicative to the quintessential essence of life. This is incredible reading. I have a very simple question. Do you compare the egoic mind to the subconscious?
I don't use those terms, but because they're a completely different frame of reference, there is, of course, a lot of subconscious activity in the egoic mind also. All we need to be...
Do they run in conjunction with each other, or are they separate?
Essentially, the ego is the ego. For the ego to survive, for the ego to thrive, you need to be unconscious of it. So the way I see it, I would describe the entire egoic functioning as part of the unconsciousness. And it's only when you become aware of those patterns that operate in your own mind that you are stepping out of the unconsciousness. And this is why we call it awakening. And when you suddenly become aware, even of initially perhaps, of just a tiny pattern in your mind. For example, we talked about complaining. If you become aware that often during the day you complain uselessly because it serves no purpose about other people or situations, and suddenly say, oh, there's the complaining voice in my head. Not only do you say there's the complaining voice, there is a deeper dimension of consciousness that has suddenly come forth from where you can be aware of that voice.
And what you're saying is we are the awareness.
That's right.
We are the awareness.
This is essentially who you are. You are not all those things that the awareness can be conscious of, the labels or whatever. You are the consciousness or the awareness
You are
itself.
the awareness.
And as long as you don't know that...
Didn't that blow your mind, Bill?
And I'm washed away here.
What is so fascinating, I was sharing this with Eckhart as we were preparing for tonight's lesson, that I received an email from you through our message boards where you were talking about how your life was sort of spiraling downhill. You were not communicating with your wife. You were sort of...
Oprah, I wasn't communicating with anybody. I was stagnating, and I needed a wake-up call, and I was on the search. And when I heard you mention this book, it was the name that stuck, A New Earth. You know, that's really cool. I really have to check that out. And it took me 5 weeks to buy the book, but you know, it's my manual for life. It's an incredible composition. It truly is.
So you were saying on the Oprah Show earlier today, many people are joining us this evening who weren't a part of the Oprah Show, but you were saying on the Oprah Show earlier today when we were Skyping that you sat down, you were going to give it a couple of hours and then...
Yeah, I figured, you know, I'll knock off 2 or 3 chapters. I got so consumed in this whole wave of writing. I was like, wow, I can't put it down. And it, you know, 12 hours later, I closed the cover and I went, wow, what an incredible ride.
Okay, and what was the biggest realization? Hey, Bill, what was the biggest realization for you?
The biggest realization, you know, the whole book itself was a realization. I didn't have any one chapter or any one paragraph. I went through, it really started on chapter 3 for me. From chapter 3, it went to the next chapter, the chapter after that, how we're brought up, how we live in a dysfunctional life. And Oprah, let me tell you something. I grew up in one of the most dysfunctional families you'd ever want to know. And this is something that we carry with us.
Your pain body.
I've said that, you know, this is a manual for life. We're thrown out there. We're not given, you know, we get a manual for our cars, our appliances, our electronics, but we're thrown out there and, you know, as young adults, it's like, go do your thing. But while we're doing our thing, we're consumed in all of the negativity that is in society, the negativity that's in our families, and it's, you know, we can take ourselves so far, but this book can take us a whole lot farther.
Well, thank you, Bill. Bill, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm glad you were around when I was talking about the book.
I got to tell you something. I don't know where you came from, and I did read in the book that you were studying you never, said what kind of a career you were on in the book. You just said that you were studying for a lucrative career, and you got off the beaten path and went into the spiritual realm. I've got to tell you something, my friend. We need more people like you.
Well,
Bill, I thank you very much for that. Thank you so much. Thank you. Where were you? What were you doing? That's a good point that Bill brings up. What were you doing before? The last week you said that your thing was you never thought you were so cute.
No,
but that you had you thought that you had such a great intellectual mind.
Yes,
so what were you doing?
I was an intellectual. I got into university fairly late because I left school at 13 or 14. And then later, when I was 18, I went to live in England, and then suddenly became interested in intellectual things. I was searching. I was becoming already more and more unhappy. And I thought all the answers would be found on the intellectual level.
So what were you planning on doing? Not being a spiritual teacher, obviously.
No, becoming a professor, and then have all the answers to life. And then after a while, I realized they don't have the answers.
Wow.
And I became more and more depressed and unhappy. And then suddenly something snapped inside, and this disidentification from my mind happened.
Yes.
Which happened to our friend
Bill.
While he was reading the book. Because when somebody reads the book and has such a powerful response to it, that means the reading of the book coincides with his own awakening as he reads. But this happens because he was so ready for it.
He was ready
for it. It's wonderful to see when that happens.
When that happens. But okay, we were talking earlier about the ego loves complaining. First of all, loves to believe, loves to identify with the thoughts in the head and believe those thoughts, and loves to complain. But aren't there some things legitimately worth complaining about? You know, anybody who's ever gone into house construction at some point or another is told a story by the construction workers, unless you have the most amazing, that this is going to be finished at a certain time or it's going to be a certain price, and then it often doesn't turn out to be what you expected. That's a complaint a lot of people have. Yes. Isn't that legitimate?
Yes.
Like you talk in the book about, my soup is cold.
Yes, in a restaurant.
Yeah, in a restaurant. My soup is cold. Sometimes your soup is cold.
That's right.
Yes.
So first of all, the complaining that we are talking about mainly here, the egoic complaining, most of that fulfills no real purpose because it's not meant to bring about change in any situation.
Yes. Okay, that's complaining and resentment complaining.
Yes, and a lot of it for many people happens only in their head. Sometimes they verbalize it also, but a lot of the complaining happens in the head alone. But no matter whether they verbalize it or whether the complaining happens in the head alone, in probably 90% of the cases, it has no real purpose because it's not meant to bring about change. It's meant to strengthen the ego.
I see that.
And then, of course, as there are situations, of course, where something needs to be said in order to bring about change in the situation. And that's a completely different kind of complaining, where you say something so that change can happen. For example, the cold soup in the restaurant. You say, the soup is cold, please bring me hot soup. That's fine. You could call that also complaining, and there are also two ways of, as far as this kind of complaining is concerned, it is connected to a real situation and is meant to bring about change. There's one way of complaining with ego in that situation also, and that is when the ego is attempting to make somebody wrong. A personal element comes into it, and there's a negativity that flows into it.
To make somebody wrong because my soup is cold.
Yes.
Damn it.
That's right.
Yeah.
You're personalizing it, and so you're making another person, almost one could say, into an enemy when you complain in that way. So whether it's somebody who is a builder who is working on your home, there is a way of complaining. I wouldn't even perhaps call it complaining, of simply stating what the situation is.
Stating the facts.
Yes, without the negativity that flows into it when the ego does it. And so that can be practiced. And whatever you are stating in order to bring about change is actually going to be much more effective if it's done without the negativity. Because if it comes with negativity, it provokes a negative reaction in the other. And so the whole situation then becomes a conflict situation.
Because you say, see if you can catch, that is to say, notice the voice in the head. Perhaps I'm on page 64, everybody, second paragraph. Perhaps in the very moment it complains about something, recognize it for what it is, the voice of the ego. And then later you say, the moment you become aware of the ego in you, this is mid-paragraph, it's strictly speaking no longer the ego, but just an old conditioned mind pattern.
Yes, because ego means you're not aware of it. So ego means unconsciousness. So a good thing that people can ask themselves when they become aware of this complaining voice in the head or the verbalized complaining voice, is this meant to bring about change in the situation? And if they look at it clearly, often they will say, no.
No, it's just hearing myself complain.
Yes.
Because it keeps fueling my sense of righteousness.
Yes, and
rightness.
And what the complaining voice also loves is to get confirmation from somebody else that, yes, you're right to complain. So then two people join.
Oh, yeah. And then you just fuel it on and on and on and on. I love it.
That's right.
Doris is Skyping us from outside of London, England. Doris, what's your question? Hello.
Hi, Oprah. Hi, Eckhart.
Hello.
What an amazing day or evening. The book resonated very deeply within me, I must say. And reading on page 62, the first paragraph, resentment is the emotion that goes with complaining. It started a question within me, and I thought, like, but where do hurt feelings belong to? Is this something that my ego tells me to feel, or where do they come from, Eckhart?
Can you give a situation, an actual situation? It's always easier to talk about this when you can look at an actual situation where, for example, you experience.
Hurt feelings, can have, most of the time, is some outside. Either way, somebody is telling you something that hurts you personally.
Okay.
But what about sadness? You lose a person, or, hurt feelings come from many different sources. Where do they come from?
Yes.
How do they relate to the ego?
Thank you. Okay.
Okay.
So often it happens that even, let's say, somebody criticizes you and you feel hurt because perhaps you were attached to what you were doing and you feel hurt. Now, what is it in you that feels hurt? And yes, it is the ego that feels hurt. And so when that happens, all you do is, first of all, you can't say, oh, I shouldn't be feeling hurt and I shouldn't have an ego. It doesn't work. You simply accept that this is what you are feeling right now, and you recognize what it is in you that is producing your feeling.
Okay, just take it in.
It's a mental image of yourself that has become hurt. Because most people think of themselves as good people, and if somebody says you're no good, immediately something feels, and many people get extremely angry. They're not only hurt, for many people that immediately turns into anger. And so the ego wants to immediately defend itself, even driving in traffic.
Right.
Often, let's say you're driving and another driver suddenly calls you idiot. That hurts. On one level, it hurts. It hurts the ego. And usually, immediately, the ego goes into self-repair mode, as I call it, and will shout something back in order to repair itself. But
I'm laughing at you because, I'm thinking, if somebody calls me an idiot, somebody gave me the finger once, and I was like, gee, you gave me the finger. But I don't remember being hurt about it. I was so stunned by it. But yeah.
Many people would be hurt.
Yeah.
But you were not, because you were.
I thought, what a bad day he's having.
Yes, you were in touch with a deeper level of yourself where nothing is hurt.
Yeah.
Where you can't be hurt on that
Or
level.
when I used to take taxis all the time, when I'd have a taxi driver in a really bad mood, the worse if he was in a horrible mood, I would tip him double extra so that he'd be nicer for the next person. Really?
Very good.
That's a good one.
There's a story about an official in Japan, a high government official, went to see a Zen master, and he asked the Zen master, can you explain to me what the self is? Self really means ego, because there's talk about the self in Buddhism. Can you explain to me what the self is? And the Zen master said, what a stupid question is that? Why you ask me such stupid questions? And immediately the government official said, how dare you talk to me like that? Don't you know who I am? And the master said, that's the ego.
That's the ego.
Yeah.
All right, got it. Got it.